The results of the New Hampshire primaries are in, and the clear winner is Donald J. Trump. For one reason, he has gotten way more votes than the past 3 incumbent elections. In fact, more than 2 of them combined, more than double Obama. So let me just clarify this very quickly. Trump is essentially the only person who's running. I mean, there are, it's like Bill Weld and Joe Walsh or whatever, but no one really takes them seriously. So people don't need to come out and vote at all. Yet for some reason, people are still coming out. As of right now, the number's actually a little bit higher. It's about 128,000 votes for Donald Trump in the GOP primary in New Hampshire, something they really didn't need to do. On the Democrat side, no candidate broke 100,000 votes, but it is fair to say voter turnout for Democrats was really high. And this is where the Democrats have some really, really good news. Trump supporters, you better be on your toes. Voter turnout for New Hampshire is set to be higher than 2008. That's what they need to win in November. Now, we don't know for sure how this will translate because there is still really bad news for Democrats. And there's a reason why I say Trump is the clear winner. Bernie Sanders narrowly defeated Pete Buttigieg, but it was one of the thinnest victories. I think the thinnest we've seen in 68 years, and Buttigieg and Sanders tied for the delegate count, meaning Pete Buttigieg is in the lead nationally. I know we've only had 2 states, but Nevada's coming up. We'll see how that plays out. There is no clear victor on the Democrat side. We can point to the excellent voter turnout, but then there comes the bad news. Independent voters are down in the Democratic primaries. Youth voters are down, and first-time voters are down, meaning what we're likely seeing is that Democrats who are core Democrats are interested in voting for who they care about. But honestly, this is predictable. The Democrats are in a state of chaos and civil war, so it makes sense that many core Democrat-based voters are going to come out to support their candidates. In the end, while Bernie Sanders can declare victory with the popular vote in Iowa, and he can declare victory with the popular vote in New Hampshire, unfortunately, that's not the way the delegate system works, and Pete Buttigieg is leading. How many of you remember 2016 Nevada? Boy, oh boy, go watch those videos if you haven't seen it. People were screaming, throwing things, like lifting up chairs. It was nuts. Apparently, they booted 64 Sanders delegates. That way Hillary Clinton would win and get the full delegates. So it was rigged. And the woman who was running it, clearly, she's like, who wants a recount? And everyone's booing, saying no. And she goes, the ayes have it, bangs the gavel and runs off. The system was clearly rigged. So we're all really excited to see what happens, next weekend in Nevada. But we'll see. Not this, I think the weekend after next. But so first, these numbers for Donald Trump are, admittedly, it's a good reflection on the enthusiasm for the president relative to the past presidents who won re-election. People are adamant about voting for Trump. Look at this. Obama won re-election and Trump got more than double what Obama did. But total vote count for Republicans is like half of what it is for Democrats. But I think there's an easy way to explain this. So here we have the 2020 results for the primary election. We can see Bernie Sanders, 9 delegates with 75,000 votes, Buttigieg with 71,000, Klobuchar with 58, Warren with 27, Biden 24, etc. This is actually really bad for the progressives and bad for Bernie Sanders. And overall, it's really bad for the Democrats. Now, I'll show you 538 saying something similar, but we may be headed to a contested convention with no clear nominee. And that means it's going to be bedlam, chaos. Once again, this is good news for Trump. He is absolutely loving it as Democrats are in complete disarray. These numbers show us the complete civil war of the left, and it shows us that the progressives, the far left Democrats, are poised to lose, at least so far. Now, I've seen some people say things like, Crystal Ball tweeted, 70% of the Democrats polled wanted Medicare for all. Interesting. It's interesting based on who they voted for. Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Biden received decent proportions of the vote count, but they're the moderates. I don't know where they stand necessarily on Medicare for all. Maybe they're all fairly progressive on that issue. But check this out. Bernie Sanders wins the popular count. In the top 5, because I'm not going to include Steyer. I guess technically you could. We could go down and include Steyer, Yang, but look at this. In the top 5, if you were to add Elizabeth Warren's vote total to Bernie Sanders, you're just over 100,000 votes. But if you add Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Biden, you're much closer to about 150,000 votes, meaning the moderates have it. So right now on the surface, what are we hearing? Progressives are cheering. Sanders supporters are declaring victory and they're dancing around. And look, I get it. They have to, because you can't show fear. You need to lead the charge, be confident, and convince people to vote for you. But let's be honest about what this means. It means that when Joe Biden drops out, and he's gonna soon because he's losing bad, Klobuchar drops out because she did nothing in Iowa and she's barely getting it. Like, I'm surprised she's even here in New Hampshire, but we'll see. It's gonna go to Buttigieg. Buttigieg is currently leading the delegate count, and he is likely to absorb the moderate vote, and he will beat Bernie Sanders. But let's go to 538. 538 breaks this down, so don't take my word for it. I'll tell you this, one of the most frustrating things ever is that the adamant Bernie Sanders supporters are going to be accusing me of bias for not giving Sanders the victory. I'm sorry. I think they're going to cheat Bernie, sure, but Buttigieg is winning, and the moderates will take the vote count. No matter what it is you think, the numbers don't lie. Okay, look, the polls were all wrong, so maybe 538 is wrong too. But I'll tell you this. I was right about Joe Biden, wasn't I? I said it basically from the time he started, he's not really running. He had crappy campaign managers. He was barely raising money. Dude can't talk straight. He's got a lot of problems. And I said, there's no way this dude's the front runner. Not gonna happen. I didn't think he's actually running. I don't know what he's doing. But sure enough, here we go. I was right. And it's not just me. I'm not trying to take credit for everything. A bunch of the Bernie supporters saw it. Trump supporters saw it. Nobody thought Joe Biden was actually running. All of these polls claimed he was leading the charge in the primaries. I'm not talking about general. I'm talking about statewide. They're like Joe Biden. And then what happens? Buttigieg and Sanders. Now, nobody saw Buttigieg coming, but the polls are trash. So why should I take 538, as fact? I got to be honest. Probably shouldn't. The problem is, what can we do? But I will say this. I was right about Joe Biden. And I say, based on that, I still think I'm going to be right about, what we're seeing here. The moderates taking it away from the progressives, Bernie getting cheated, and Antifa losing it. Check this out. 538 says Sanders is the front runner after New Hampshire, and a contested convention has become more likely. But the model needs post-New Hampshire polling to make sense of a chaotic race. Check this out. The Democratic primary is in a confusing state at the moment, and our forecast model is a little confused also. There are a couple of assumptions it's making about how the polls may react to New Hampshire that may not be entirely right. The model is also limited by the lack of polling in states after New Hampshire, most notably Nevada and South Carolina. So we encourage you to take the model with a large grain of salt until some of that post-New Hampshire polling comes in. But the two takeaways that the model feels most confident about are two things I am happy to vouch for, says Nate Silver himself. First, Bernie Sanders is the most likely person to win the Democratic nomination. We will see. We will see. I'm not entirely convinced. But, hey, 538, they're the experts, right? But check this out. The chance of there being no pledged delegate majority, which could potentially lead to a contested convention, is high and increasing. I am willing to bet that will be the case. Now, I don't know why they think that'll be the case. They're looking at polls that were all wrong. I'm not. So maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But based on my gut feeling, now I'm being a bit facetious. I'm talking about the news I've read, the results so far, the vote count so far, the delegate count so far. I don't care what your polls say in terms of forecasting. They were all wrong. So my personal opinion, based on all of this data, these news stories, is that the moderates are going to get behind a moderate candidate as other candidates start dropping out, knowing they're losing. But here's the thing. People like Joe Biden are refusing to give up. Joe Biden should drop out. He shouldn't have been in the race in the first place. But he's like, no, we're taking it to South Carolina. Oh, come on, dude. I don't even know where Bloomberg is in this. But if they got out, right, these people are splitting the moderate vote. If they really wanted to stop Bernie, they would drop out. And so those moderate votes would drift over to Klobuchar or Buttigieg. Or, I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm surprised a lot of people aren't bowing out and just giving it to Buttigieg. But I'll be honest, he's got 23 delegates. It's not like he's guaranteed to win. What I truly find fascinating about all the cheering from Sanders camps about the popular vote is that It doesn't matter. First of all, what did any of these Sanders supporters do in 2016 when Nevada was basically stolen? They did a whole lot of nothing. And then Bernie Sanders bent down on one knee and kissed the pinky ring of Hillary Clinton. That's what he did. And, he should have stood up for himself. He should have said no, but he just couldn't do it, could he? Right now, after these two grand victories of Sanders, they say, Buttigieg is winning. He got the same delegate count that Sanders did. Popular vote does not matter. So what are they going to get? Honestly, I don't know. But check this out. While all of the Democrats are dancing around saying, yes, we got that voter turnout we needed, I will be the first to say that's good. Really good news for Democrats. Really, really good news. But what about the blank or bust voters? Yang or bust, Bernie or bust, Biden or bust, never burners, never Bernies, whatever they call themselves. What happens when that voter turnout goes sour? What happens when those moderate voters defect to Trump? I'm telling you this right now. There are never Trumpers who are saying things like, we are all Democrats today. Excuse me. No, you're not. Because pro-life Democrats are basically being told to GTFO. I don't think Buttigieg's response to the pro-life Democrat was the worst in the world, but Bernie straight up said it's a requirement to be pro-choice. You've got 14% of your party that is pro-life, dude. If you don't want the vote, then tell them to leave, but they'll leave. So I don't see any good news for the Democrats in the long run with how they're playing this. If Bernie Sanders is the most likely to win, then I think the most likely person to win the November election is Donald Trump. Because what people don't realize right now, you got to understand this. When you are given a poll and it says, who would you vote for in this matchup? A lot of people are saying, I want this person. He's my person, right? They say between Bernie and Trump, a new poll came out saying it's the biggest lead, like 18 points. People would support Sanders across the board. Great. And what happens when Sanders loses the nomination to some moderate, vanilla yogurt candidate that no one cares about? Then all of that big activist enthusiasm either turns sour and rejects the system. Trump wins. What happens when Bernie Sanders does win and the never Trumpers and pro-life Democrats panic and say Trump is better? Or the people who don't like socialism, which is like more than half the country. Donald Trump wins. The fraction of the Democratic Party goes sour no matter which way you cut it. Now, again, Moody's Analytics said with record turnout, Democrats will squeak by with, I think, like one electoral vote over 270. Okay, check this out. He says, there are also some negatives for Sanders. While he won New Hampshire, although pledged delegates were split evenly between Sanders and Buttigieg, which the model gives Buttigieg a tiny bit of credit for, his 25.7% of the vote there underperformed our projections by 2 to 3 percentage points. New Hampshire is a state that by all rights ought to have been fairly strong for him, as Iowa should also have been. And although Sanders leads in national polls, he averages only 22% of the vote in them, unusually low for the national leader at this stage of the race. Between the slight underperformance in New Hampshire and a couple of mediocre polls coming in for Sanders, while our model was frozen awaiting New Hampshire results, he actually fell slightly in the forecast from where he had been 24 hours earlier. They expected him to win, but he didn't win by what they expected him to win by. Now, check this out. They say still Sanders' 38% chance of pledged delegate majority is far better than any other Democrat. He also has a 52% chance of a pledged delegate plurality. Even if this isn't the strongest possible version of Sanders, he's come far closer to actualizing his potential than anyone else in the field. Furthermore, the tactical considerations of the race are setting up well for Sanders. The moderate lane, still very crowded and perhaps even getting more crowded, no longer just Biden and Buttigieg, but also Klobuchar and Bloomberg. And Sanders is pulled well ahead of Elizabeth Warren in the progressive lane. They say, but New Hampshire is also good news if you're rooting for chaos. Our forecast has the chance of no pledged delegate majority up to 33%. Its highest figure yet, and roughly double what it was before Iowa. Let me be clear with this. What that means is the second most likely outcome is there is no unity in the party. Could you imagine the bedlam and chaos at the DNC with protesters outside? No clear winner inside. And in their rage, the Bernie Sanders supporters boo and jeer Buttigieg as he squeaks by with a contested victory. Do you think Bernie Sanders voters who boo Buttigieg are going to go out and vote for him in the general election? I don't think so. In fact, I think many of them will go to Donald Trump. There's the chaos voters, the people who are accelerationists who think Trump is the worst thing in the world, want to vote for him because they think it'll make things go faster. I kid you not, I know some people like that. I actually know some far lefties who, when Hillary Clinton took the nomination, they voted for Trump. Not because they liked him, because two reasons. They wanted to punish Clinton, and they were hoping it would make the downfall come faster. I think we'll still see some of that. And I think we're going to see around half of Yang's voters, for instance, going for Donald Trump, saying they would not support a Democratic candidate if it was not Yang. He goes on to say almost everything went well from the standpoint of a contested convention. Sanders won, but with a smaller share of the vote than the model expected. Moreover, the second and third place candidates, Buttigieg and Klobuchar, may or may not be poised to take advantage of any post-New Hampshire surge they get, having begun the evening at just 10% and 4% respectively in national polls, and not having any obvious strength in Nevada or South Carolina. Meanwhile, the two candidates apart from Sanders, who had seemed to have built the broadest national coalitions, Warren and Biden, did terribly in New Hampshire. They say although the race is so wide open, they can't entirely be counted out either, especially not Biden. So this is why I'm saying Donald Trump is the clear winner. He's got a massive victory percentage-wise compared to the other incumbent presidents when they were running. So that is a clear showing of enthusiasm and support for the president. It's huge turnout, to my understanding, technically. Now, technically, you could all say it's bad voter turnout, and many people are trying to play that game, but it is completely absurd. I don't know if I actually have that pulled up where somebody's pretending like, here we go, check this out. This guy, Dean Obadala, says real numbers in New Hampshire last night. Total votes for the GOP primary, 133,000. Democratic votes over 290,000. That's a massive enthusiasm gap. Keep in mind, Trump had a rally in New Hampshire and has been spending money on ads across the state. Trump will lose 2020, period. This dude doesn't seem to understand what every journalist, many of the biased ones seem to understand. There was no real GOP primary. Nobody had to come out. So people are shocked the numbers were this good. He's ignoring what the data actually shows. Obama won re-election with only 49,000 primary votes in New Hampshire, and Trump got more than double that. That is incredible, especially in New Hampshire, which is a northeastern blue state neighboring Bernie Sanders' state of Vermont. I think this shows that there is chaos and disarray in the Democratic Party. Bernie is winning the popular vote, but losing the delegate count. We are headed for a contested convention, and I think it's going to be contested. I do. I do not think the Democratic establishment wants to bow out and back up to Bernie Sanders. James Carville's freaking out. So I think we can see what's going to happen. Chaos, meaning good news for Trump. It's going to be good news for the Republicans. And key turnout from certain groups is down. Well, okay, based on the preliminary data I had so far, you've got people tweeting about it, saying that youth vote was down slightly and first-time voters was down slightly. So it's not an enthusiasm gap. That guy Dean's wrong. It's that people are showing up because they like their respective candidates, and there are many of them. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, other than we are seeing the increasing likelihood of chaos at the DNC. And let me remind you of 2016. When no one protested the Republican convention and the left protested the DNC. I hope you're ready. It's going to get nuts. But I could be wrong. Look, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. But I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel, and I will see you all there.